really, this is a kind of ham and egg justice. You know, you go to get a ham and egg sandwich, and you, particularly if it's in your house and you're cooking at the same time, they kind of blend as if they're one. But whenever there's a vote, the hog always votes against the sandwich, and the chicken doesn't mind, because the hog has to give up total sacrifice. The chicken just drops an egg. So this appears to be more equal than it is. The second is that there is a day of reckoning for deficit spending and reckless spending and misappropriation of values. And when I think about what's happening in France and what's happening here, about to happen in the U.S., today the poor people are paying for the Iraq war. This is a payment for the war that you didn't want and that you were misled into in a war that was unnecessary. You're paying for the Iraq war today. You're paying for those who use offshore tax-paying dodging schemes. You're paying for those rich who didn't pay taxes. And you're paying for trade policies where you globalize capital and didn't globalize human rights, workers' rights, women and children's rights, and environmental security. So today is a day of reckoning. Ironically, the people who were not invited to the party is having to pay for the party. And it's falling on the workers. I think there may be a miscalculation of the devastation of these draconian cuts. And the media, this must be in your purview, it's already brought into the line. You just have to do this. The media, corporate-owned media, has bought into the line because they are at once corporations, and reporters are not going against the owners of their companies. And so there's a sense of surrender by, I talked with several journalists today who are ordinarily kind of sharp. Well, we must do this, therefore. And so they are selling this as a necessary thing to save Britain. I must admit to you that nonviolent discipline protests are on the way, and they all remain nonviolent and disciplined and focused. I am very concerned. 500,000 jobs, 500,000 people who own homes and who buy cars, who buy clothes, whose children are in school, who have to pay taxes. If you're in a hole, you should get a shovel, and then get a rope, not a shovel. And this is digging a deeper hole, because you'll have less work, less workers, less revenue, less ability for the work your way out. So obviously our point of view is that we must invest out and not cut out. Certainly in the States, go to a place like Detroit just for a moment, 90,000 vacant homes are abandoned lots. Not one chain grocery store does a food desert and a health hazard. Not one retail chain store. The big three used to be 3 automotive companies. The big three now are 3 gambling casinos. We've gone from making cars to shuffling cars and rolling dice, living on chance for a living. The USA owns 60% of GM. Canada owns 20% of GM. Number one market for Buick is China, not rebuilding plants in the USA. And thus you have about 9.7% unemployment generally, but in the ghettos it's around 30% unemployment. And if there was a commitment to reinvest, to rebuild houses and schools and roads, sewers, you could put people back to work and gainful employment. And I was in Detroit, and I closed the other day at a meeting of ministers, and went across the street to a home where the yards had grown up with weeds, and the roof had collapsed, and there were boards. I said, "What do you see?" They said, "We see a Islam House. I said, look a little closer, what do you see? They said, we don't get it. So what you really see is a need for trade skill training. Somebody can have a job doing landscaping. Somebody can remove boards and put up window panes, and that will create a supply for windows, a demand for them. Somebody can fix roofs and be glazers and plumbers and be working and purchasing and as opposed to having almost 50% unemployment in that city alone. So we see what happens when you don't. We bail out the banks without link to lending or to reinvestment. So now they are washed in hoarding capital, while we expect 2 million more home foreclosures this year. And so we're in the same crisis. When the banks and Wall Street begin to fail, Northern Rock went down early on. And that shows that there's a globalized connection between these forces, and we must have the same kind of connection between you here and our allies. We must have a massive international day of protest. Yes, we had an international day of protest against the Iraq war. We were right. That war was not necessary. We were right. We were being lied to. They admit now we have been misled. We've lost lives and money and honor. Now today, 500,000 families are about to pay the price for those who held the party. So thanks for allowing me to share with you today, and I look forward to our connecting what we're doing here around the world.
Okay. That's the